Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that might sound a little out there. We're talking about how complex ideas like history and social science are not just for big kids, they're actually happening right now in preschool classrooms everywhere.
I know. Right off the bat, you're probably thinking, history? Civics? For 4-year-olds? No way! Those sound like high school subjects, right? How on earth are little kids supposed to get a handle on that stuff? Well, here's the thing. They already are, just maybe not in the way you'd expect.
Let's just reframe this for a second. Preschoolers are basically natural-born historians. Every single time a child tells you about what they did yesterday or listens with those wide eyes to a family story about the olden days, what are they doing? They're engaging with the past. They're literally building their own personal timeline, their own history.
And it doesn't stop there. They're also really intuitive geographers. Think about it. When a kiddo recognizes the route to the grocery store, or they can picture the layout of their room to find that one specific lost toy, that's the very beginning of spatial awareness. That's mapping. That's geography in action.
And yep, you guessed it, they're even everyday economists. All those super serious negotiations over who gets the red truck, the whole concept of sharing, or even just using play money in a pretend store. These are all the first baby steps to understanding value, resources, and exchange. So you see, these huge ideas are already woven right into their world.
All right, so let's dig into this a little deeper, starting with the absolute bedrock of it all, a child's understanding of themselves and their place in the world. This is really about them trying to answer that giant question. Who am I, and who are all these other people around me? In the preschool world, self and society is all about that journey of discovery. For a lot of kids, it's the very first time they're meeting friends with different family traditions, different languages, or different abilities. It's their first and most important lesson in how our differences are what make our community so much more interesting. This chart is pretty cool because it shows just how much can change in a single year. You can see that at around age 4, a child is definitely curious about differences, but they're still going to stick with what's familiar. Fast forward a year, and that interest in diversity really starts to blossom, even if they still have a strong preference for their own group. And notice their play, too. It goes from simple roles like mommy or daddy to much more complex ideas like being a doctor.
So let's look at a real-world example. This is such a classic classroom scene. The teacher, Miss Berta, sets up this awesome restaurant play area. And of course, it's a huge hit. But it immediately turns into total chaos. Kids are fighting over the one toy cash register, the one plastic hamburger. Everybody wants to be the customer, and nobody's working together. So what does she do? She totally redesigns the space. She brings in more cash registers, a ton of play food, and, this is the genius part, she creates little clip-on badges for different jobs: cook, cashier, server. By adding just a little bit of structure and showing them how to cooperate, she turns all that arguing into a happy, functioning pizza place.
And that whole idea of cooperation, it leads us perfectly into our next big topic. This is what civics really means in preschool. It's got nothing to do with learning about government. It's about that fundamental, crucial skill of learning how to live together and be a good member of the group.
At this age, civics means things like sharing the job of tidying up, learning how to take turns, or even participating in a group vote, like picking a name for the class hamster. For many kids, this is their very first experience of being a citizen in a community outside of their own family.
And you can really see this skill grows so fast. A 4-year-old totally gets the rules of fairness, but usually it's from their own point of view. Just a year later, they're starting to get group concepts like majority rule, and they'll even fight for the rules to make sure things are fair for other kids, not just for themselves. It's a huge leap.
Okay, let's look at another great story. Picture this. One morning, the kids walk into the classroom and there's a mystery. All the baby dolls from the little play clinic area are just gone. And 2 of the kids, Julia and Javier, are really upset. Their whole plan for the day is totally ruined.
Now, instead of just solving the problem for them, the teacher, Miss Anya, does something brilliant. She turns it into a group mission. She gathers everyone and tells the story of the mystery of the missing baby dolls. Suddenly, the kids who are upset are now the leaders of a class-wide investigation. They all work together, they share clues, and eventually, they find the dolls. The teacher didn't just find some toys, she taught them about teamwork and community.
All right, so we've talked about the social world, how kids learn to get along. Now let's shift gears and look at the physical world. This is where history, geography, and economics pop back up as these amazing tools for kids to make sense of everything around them.
It really boils down to these three core ideas that are all kind of tangled together. First, you've got a sense of time. That's their personal history. Then there's a sense of place, which is their budding understanding of geography. And finally, you have the marketplace, which helps them understand all the buying and selling they see every day. You know, this whole concept of time is actually pretty tricky for little kids. For a 4-year-old, past events are like these little islands in time. They remember them, but they can't really connect them in order. It's with an adult's help that they slowly start to build that mental timeline, linking yesterday to today to what might happen tomorrow.
And this is just such a simple but totally powerful way that teachers can make that abstract idea of time feel real. A teacher just makes a 2-column chart. When I was a baby, and now I can. The kids list things they couldn't do as babies and then things they can do now. And just like that, their own growth, their personal history, becomes something they can actually see and touch.
Okay, but here's the thing. None of this amazing learning can just happen in a vacuum. It all requires a very specific kind of environment, a foundation that's built on inclusion and respect. This is the soil that lets everything else grow.
This quote from Louise Derman-Sparks and Julie Olson-Edwards just says it all, really. The heart of anti-bias work is a vision of a world in which all children are able to blossom. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, isn't it? It's not just about teaching stuff, it's about creating a world where every single child feels seen, valued, and ready to thrive.
So what does that actually look like? This slide breaks down a really important difference. On one side, you've got a tourist approach. That's when you do a surface-level activity, maybe once a year for a holiday. The problem is, it can actually reinforce stereotypes. But on the other hand, you have an anti-bias approach. This is way deeper. It's about authentically reflecting the real lives of the children in the room every single day, and not being afraid to talk about fairness directly when issues come up.
Now, of course, this learning doesn't have to stop at the classroom door. In fact, it shouldn't. Families are a child's first and most important teachers. So what can you do to support all this incredible learning at home?
And the best part is how simple and powerful these things are. When you tell family stories, guess what? You're teaching history. When you talk about what you did over the weekend, you're building their sense of time. Working on a chore together teaches responsibility. That's civics. Talking about how to take care of the planet introduces ecology. And even talking about what your family needs versus what you want at the store, that's a basic economics lesson. You're probably doing a lot of this already, but now you can see the amazing why behind it.
And that really brings us to our big takeaway. Once you start to see it, you realize these big, important social science ideas aren't things we need to drill into our preschoolers. They are already learning them all the time through play and talking and just watching the world. So the real question for all of us is, how can we get better at seeing the entire world as a classroom for our youngest citizens?